be. All right. Let me say something. Well, before I even begin in Acts chapter 20, as you're getting situated, as we are going to be soon ending the book of Acts and the life of Paul, and I say soon relative, we still have several chapters to go. If you have a suggestion of what Bible character to study next, if you please let me know so I can start preparing. It's already been suggested that I bring about Ezekiel. It would be more of a book study because I can cover Ezekiel in about 10 minutes if I just did the Bible character. But if I went through the book, that would take a long time. But if you have a suggestion, just let me know about that. Let me say this. I wish I would have done my notes differently, particularly on this section right here. There's nothing wrong with the way that I did it, but boy, I should have done it differently. And so I'm going to give you something that's not even in your notes. I'll make sure you have at the end of the night all the answers, all the blanks. And we are going to cover some of that, but I'm going to give you a more clearer explanation of the chronology, what's happening. So I don't know if you want to try to take notes or just try to mentally grasp things as we go. I've got a whole page of typed notes for this. So bear with me, but I think it'll be interesting. I really do. I'm actually jazzed about this. So what you can fill in your notes, letter I, is the departure into Macedonia. The departure into Macedonia. So Paul is in Ephesus. He's been there for over 2 years, and he has stated, because he's written a letter to Corinth, that he has a goal in mind. In fact, if you look at chapter 19, verse 21, after these things were ended, Paul purposed in the Spirit, when he had passed through Macedonia, Achaia, to go to Jerusalem, saying, after I've been there, I must also see Rome. So his purpose was to go to 4 places: Macedonia, Achaia, back to Jerusalem, and then to Rome. He will do all of those, 3 of which is under his control. The 4th one, he's a prisoner. But nevertheless, that's his goal. So he's leaving Ephesus, and that's where we pick up chapter 20. So after the riot that took place, remember how Demetrius got all the silversmiths? This is what we covered last week, and together saying, hey, our occupation is in jeopardy because Paul's preaching Jesus, and they're no longer buying idols. And besides that, he's attacking Diana, our goddess. And so this big giant riot, they rushed into the theater, grabbing Aristarchus and Gaius. And Alexander stood up for the Jews to try to speak. But all of a sudden, the towns, they started chanting for 2 hours. And then the town official got up and said, hey guys, you guys need to, don't take matters in your own hands. Don't be vigilantes. You need to dismiss yourself. If you have an issue, take it to court. And so the problem was over, but now he's getting ready to leave Ephesus. Look at chapter 20, verse number 1. And after the uproar was ceased, Paul called unto him the disciples and embraced them and departed for to go into Macedonia. So I'm not going to take time to look at my notes, but if you wanted to glance at the map a couple of pages back, you can see that he's traveling northwestward up to the Macedonia area. And Macedonia is a region. It's got several cities in it, 3 main ones, Philippi being the main city. But he's leaving Ephesus, and he's heading in that direction. Now, hold your place in Acts chapter 20, but go to your right to 2 Corinthians. 2 Corinthians chapter 2. As he's traveling northwestward going towards Macedonia. He's coming across a town called Troas. His desire is to meet a co-laborer by the name of Titus there, hoping to get a report from him about Corinth, because Paul had written Corinth. Paul wrote to Corinth and didn't know how they would respond. So as he's waiting in Troas for Titus, he gets a little concerned that Titus isn't there. Look at 2 Corinthians chapter 2, verse 12. Furthermore, when I came to Troas to preach Christ's gospel, and a door was opened unto me of the Lord, I had no rest in my spirit, because I found not Titus my brother. But taking my leave of them, I went from thence into Macedonia. So we know that he left Ephesus en route to Macedonia, stops at Troas, hoping to see Titus, but Titus wasn't there. Still in 2 Corinthians, turn over to chapter 7. As Paul travels, and it's a few days' journey, I'll prove that to you later, but as Paul travels up to Macedonia, when he gets to that area, he finally hooks up with Titus. And it is a relief for two reasons. One, because he finally gets to see Titus. And secondly, because Titus brings him good news about Corinth. And so he's relieved on both of those cases. Look at chapter 7, 2 Corinthians 7. Look at verse 5. For when we were come into Macedonia, our flesh had no rest, but we were troubled on every side. Without were fightings, within were fears. Now, basically saying we can't get any sleep because we've got problems on the outside and we've got problems on the inside. So there's fightings and fears going on. They had no rest. And now the next verse is so encouraging. Nevertheless, God, that comforteth those that are cast down. Aren't you glad for that? There are times in life where all of us are cast down. Sometimes it's for a logical reason and understanding reason. Other times we just feel down and there's no logical reason whatsoever. But we have a God that can lift us up and bring us out of that. It says, He comforteth us by the coming of Titus, and not by his coming only, but by the consolation wherewith he was comforted in you. So he's writing to Corinth, obviously it's the Corinthians, when he told us your earnest desire, your mourning, your fervent mind toward me, so that I rejoice the more. So obviously the people of Corinth responded positively and was eager to see Paul, which was a relief to him, as well as him seeing Titus. So Paul is up in Macedonia. He finally gets there. He finally meets Titus. He finally gets word about Corinth and is relieved. So hold your place in 2 Corinthians. Yes, hold your place in 2 Corinthians. Go back to Acts chapter 20. We're going to ping pong it tonight, okay? Back and forth. Look at verse 2. And when we had gone over those parts. So he's in Macedonia, and he's gone through Troas and some other places. He finally gets to Macedonia, and there are a couple of cities that he's talking about here. And these will be familiar to you because he's been at these on previous missionary journeys. One of them being Philippi would be the main city that he's referring to here. The other one would be Berea, and a third one would be Thessalonica. So he's in those parts there, and he is ministering to them. In fact, look at again the rest of the part of verse 2. And had given them much exhortation. So he's staying at each place just a little while and exhorting them as best he can in that Macedonia area. Now, hold your place in Acts 20. go back up to 2 Corinthians. While he's there in Macedonia, he's now going to write 2 Corinthians. And it must be at the beginning of his stay there, just for logical reasons, he's now going to send this letter, 2 Corinthians, back with Titus and two other guys that the Bible doesn't name. It does mention two guys, but it doesn't mention their names. And I'll show you this. Look at verse 16. Chapter 8, 2 Corinthians chapter 8, sorry. Verse 16. But thanks be to God, which put the same earnest care into the heart of Titus for you. Now look at verse 18. And we have sent with him, that's Titus, the brother. Now it doesn't mention his name, he's just known as the brother. Now, all of us, I would assume, I know I have, when I can't think of somebody's name, hey, brother, like that, or sister, something like that. This past Sunday, Randy was after baptism, I was at the back of the church, and a guy's coming by, and I know his name. I could not think of it just while I'm shaking his hand. I was like, hey, how you doing? And literally, as he's walking away, I remember his name. Just like a second too late, but I can't go, Jason, after he's gone. You get startled, But I don't think that's the issue here, that he just didn't know the guy's name, because look how positively everyone thinks about him. And we have sent with him, Titus, the brother, whose praise is in the gospel throughout all the churches. And not that only, but who was also chosen of the churches to travel with us with this grace. So this guy, whoever he was, he's the brother, but people know him, and he was selected by several people. So that's, even though we're going through Bible characters and we're studying the Apostle Paul, this is a character that we ought to strive for. He's got qualities that all of us need to have. So Titus is going, delivering 2 Corinthians. The brother is going. Now watch the other brother. Look at verse number 22. And we have sent with them our brother, whom we have oftentimes proved diligent in many things, but now much more diligent upon the great confidence which I have in you. So both of these brothers have qualities that are something that we ought to strive for. The second one being diligent, it mentions there, and known of the churches. So great character, great testimony, but Titus and the two brothers are delivering the letter. And the reason why I think it must have been at the beginning of his time in Macedonia is because he's getting ready to go down to Corinth. So why would he send a letter to Corinth one day ahead of his arrival? It must have been when he's getting there soon after Macedonia, writes the letter, he stays there ministering, exhorting the brethren in those parts, but then he's going to go travel down south. Now, we won't be coming back to 2 Corinthians anymore, but let's go back to Acts chapter 20. Y'all with me so far? Okay. So Paul has sent 2 Corinthians with Titus and the two brothers. He's ministering up there in Macedonia. But now look at the end of verse 2. It says, when he had gone over those parts, and at the end of verse 2, he came into Greece. Now, the word Greece is generic. It just means a large area. Technically speaking, you've got Macedonia up north, and you've got Greece down south, or Achaia. Greece is the country, Achaia is the region, Corinth is the main city. United States, Illinois, Geneseo, same type of thing. So as it going down to Greece, he was in Macedonia, he's going down to Greece, specifically Achaia, specifically Corinth. And I'll show you that in just a second. Now, we know how much time he's going to stay in the Greece area. Look at verse 3. And there abode 3 months. So he's in Greece, and oftentimes whenever Paul stays for a while, he writes a letter. When he was in Ephesus, he wrote a letter. Here he's going to be in 3 months in Greece, and he's going to write a letter. Hold your place in Acts chapter 20. Go to your right to the book of Romans, chapter 1. Since Paul's desire was eventually to get to Rome, remember he's already said he wants to go to Macedonia. He's already done that. He's already said he wants to go to Achaia. That's where he's at, in the Greece area. His third place and destiny was Jerusalem. So since he's getting ready to depart eastward to Jerusalem, he's going to write Rome, which is westward. And watch what he says to the people of Rome. While he's in Greece, he's telling them basically, I have every intention in visiting you. Look with me at Romans chapter 1, verse 8. I'm going to read several verses. First, I thank my God through Jesus Christ for you all. Remember, he's writing Rome. That your faith is spoken of throughout the whole world. For God is my witness, whom I serve with my spirit in the gospel of his Son, that, without ceasing, I make mention of you always in my prayers. Make request, if by any means, now at length, I might have a prosperous journey by the will of God to come unto you. So see, he's now letting them know his intentions. I want to come to you, Rome. Verse 11, for I long to see you, that I may impart unto you some spiritual gift, to the end ye may be established. That is, that I may be comforted together with you by the mutual faith, both of you and me. Now I would not have you ignorant, brethren, that oftentimes I purpose to come unto you. Now watch the next phrase that's in parentheses, but was let hitherto. Now before I read the rest, let me explain that phrase, because it's an awkward statement in our modern day thinking. I don't know if you play tennis or know anything about tennis. I'm not a tennis player. I like racquetball, but I understand the rules of tennis. Whenever a person who serves the ball and it hits the net, somebody yells out, let. It means the ball was hindered. It's an old term that means hindered. So what he is saying here is, I've been hindered before. I've tried to come. That was my intention. I've been hindered in coming to you. But was let hitherto, that I might have some fruit among you also, even as among other Gentiles. So clearly he says, I'm planning to come. I've had every intention of coming, but this has come up, that's come up. There's been things that have hindered me. Now, you're in the book of Romans. Let's go to chapter 15. Romans chapter 15. Paul is closing out this letter. Remember, he's in Greece. He's writing the people of Rome. And as he's closing this letter out, I want you to notice something else that he says. Romans 15, verse 22. For which cause also I have been much hindered from coming to you. So he confirms the same thing that he said in chapter 1. But now, having no more place in these parts, so he's getting ready to leave Greece, and having a great desire these many years to come unto you, whensoever I take my journey into Spain. So now he's mentioned that he wants to come into Spain. I will come to you, for I trust to see you in my journey, and to be brought on my way thitherward by you, if first I be somewhat filled with your company. But now I go unto Jerusalem, to minister unto the saints. Now let me stop there. Do you remember he said he was going to go to 3 places? Macedonia, he's been there. Achaia, he's there now. Jerusalem, he's now telling Rome that he's going to Jerusalem. That's his 3rd spot. And then his intention is to go to Rome. And remember, he's already mentioned a couple of places that he's collecting money to take to Jerusalem. He wants to minister to the people, the poor saints which are at Jerusalem. In fact, look at verse 26. For it hath pleased them of Macedonia and Achaia to make a certain contribution for the poor saints which are at Jerusalem. So everywhere he's gone, he's collecting money to give to the people of Jerusalem. And that's why he's wanting to go back there. Verse 27, it hath pleased them verily. Now watch this. And their debtors they are. For if the Gentiles have been made partakers of their spiritual things, their duty is also to minister unto them in carnal things. Now, what that means is the gospel that have been given to Achaia, to Macedonia, is all a result because of Jerusalem. Jerusalem was the gospel. The gospel came from there. The apostles came from there. And so really the benefactors of them having Jesus Christ as their Savior is because of Jerusalem. So since they are debtors to Jerusalem, they are now giving financially, physically, because there's been blessings spiritually. Michelle and I, back in 2014, went to Israel, and I was trying to keep it on the down low that I was a pastor. I just wanted to enjoy the tour. I don't know if that's too spiritual or not too spiritual, but I just wanted to be a regular person. You know how it is being a pastor, and everyone's, But anyway, I'm from Illinois, and 2014, we were in California at that time. But anyway, word got out that I was a pastor. And so people started sharing things with me that was going on in their life and everything, which is fine. But I'll never forget, we were in Jerusalem. We were overlooking Jerusalem. I think we were at the Mount of Olives, but I can't remember that. And they said, Pastor Dave, step up here, would you? And they all joined hands. They said, would you pray right now? Lead us in a prayer for the peace of Jerusalem. And so I put on the best prayer I could, for the peace of Jerusalem. And it was a wonderful thing. But one of the things I said was, and I meant sincerely, that America, I don't know if you remember that tour guide, Naphtali, he said amen to this. I said, America, we're debtors to Israel because Jesus Christ came from Israel and Jesus benefited the world. And really, we're all debtors to Israel. In the same case here, what he's saying is Macedonia has chipped in an offering, Achaia has chipped in an offering, and they're debtors to Jerusalem, so they want to give back. And that's what that verse is referring to in verse 27 of Romans. All right, so let's go back to Acts chapter 20. We're no longer in 2 Corinthians. We're no longer in Romans. So he's in Greece, and he's left Ephesus. He's went up to Macedonia. He's written 2 Corinthians. Now he's down to Greece. He's there for 3 months. He's writing the book of Romans, telling them, I'm coming, but first I have to go to Jerusalem. I've got an offering to give to them. He's getting ready to go and leave through the eastern port. They have 2 ports there, and to go this way. But he finds something out. He finds out that there's a plot against him, and so he says, thanks, but no thanks. I'm not going to sail right now that way. I'll travel by land now. Look at verse number 3. chapter 20, Acts chapter 20, verse 3. And there abode 3 months, and when the Jews laid wait for him, as he was about to sail into Syria, he purposed to return through Macedonia. So Syria is the main area. Of course, that's where Antioch is, but he's coming to that area to go to Jerusalem. And that's his intent. And people are beginning to find out his travel plans. And in fact, it was not just anybody, but it was the Jews that laid wait for him. So Paul's got enemies wherever, not just the Gentiles, but back in Ephesus, it was some of the Ephesians, but here's the Jews, and he's in the Grecian area, and they're plotting something to kill him by. So instead of immediately departing to go to Jerusalem, he says, I'll travel back through Macedonia by the land and circle around back that way. En route, going back up to Macedonia, several people from several churches begin to join Paul. Now I'm going to read the verse, and you give me some reasons why you think that they do this. Verse 4. And there accompanied him, remember he purposed to return through Macedonia, that's verse 3. And there accompanied him into Asia. And then it's going to mention all these people from different places. Sopater, he's of Berea, and of the Thessalonians, Aristarchus and Secundus, and Gaius, he's of Derbe, and Timotheus, and of Asia, Tychicus and Trophimus. So give me a couple of reasons. I thought of a couple. I don't know whether I'm right. You could have a better explanation than I. We probably thought of some of the same reasons, but why do you think some of these guys are joining Paul? Protection, security. Yeah, they're wanting to circle around him. I think not just because he has the collection for the Jerusalem saints, but for his life primarily, because his life is under a threat. I also think of another reason. Somebody else think of something?
Also familiarity of the places he was going.
That's good. I didn't even think about that.
Following the churches as he goes back.
Yep. He's going back. They would be familiar, and those places he's been to, and they certainly. Ken?
I think for more than just verbal support. That they were really moved, some of them in their heart, to do more than just say, hey, yeah, I'll be praying for you, or yeah, I'll watch out for you. I think some of them it took more of a commitment, I think, from some of these to go.
And I'm glad you put the word commitment, because some of these are coming from cities, and they're traveling over. In fact, I'll show you the place where they're getting ready to go. So it's several days out of their schedule, taking off work and everything, for that commitment. Yeah. Was it back in the back table? Niles?
Horsepower. These guys are
Did you say horsepower?
horsepower. The reputation of these men that people knew from those specific areas that supported him would generate more support.
Oh, sure. Sure. That's true. It's a good way to summarize that, horsepower. Anything else? Sort of what Kent was saying as well, companionship. I think it was supporting him, because anytime you're attacked, you want some companionship to be with you, to morally support you, emotionally support you as well. But several joined him. Now, they get up to the Macedonia area, and they're in Philippi. And what he decides to do next is send the majority of the guys ahead. Now, I do know for certain one guy that stays with him. It's Luke, the guy who's actually writing this book. We know that based upon the pronoun that Luke uses. Look at verse number 5. These, referring to those dudes up in verse 4, going before, tarried for us at Troas. So the guys mentioned in 4 was now Paul, they protected Paul, was Paul's companion, had committed to Paul, but Paul convinced them to go ahead as the advance team to Troas, but Luke is staying with them. Now, it could be that Luke and 5 or 6 others were there. It just doesn't say that. It does say that those guys in verse 4 went ahead, but we just know of the 2 for certain that are staying behind. And they are in Philippi. I'll prove it to you in just a second. So they're up in the Macedonia area. Paul and Luke are there, and the other guys have gone ahead to Troas as sort of an advance team. Now, look with me at verse 6. And we sailed away from Philippi after the days of unleavened bread. Now stop there. That may not mean anything, but I hope and I have prayed that I will explain this clearly. I've put a lot of study on how to best present it, and I hope I do it well. The Jews had a different calendar than we do. Ours start in January, but their first month is different than ours. On their first month, on the 14th day of the first month, is their Passover, which would be the March-April period, our time. So that's on the 14th. And you're thinking, okay, it doesn't even mention the Passover. It mentions the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Yes, but according to the Old Testament, the Feast of Unleavened Bread happened on the 15th. It happened on the day after the Passover. So we know that the Feast of Unleavened Bread was the 15th, and we know that the Passover is on the 14th. You say, what's the big deal there? All right. So Paul must have wanted to stay at Philippi for at least those 2 feasts, the Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread. So he sent the guys ahead of him as the advance team to Troas. Once he's leaving the Feast of Unleavened Bread, once the Feast of Unleavened Bread was over, he's leaving Philippi. Watch this. And came unto them, that's those guys, the advance team, to Troas. In how many days? 5. So from Philippi to Troas, it took them 5 days to get there. And how long did they stay at Troas? 7 days. Now, let's do some math. You have 2 days, Passover, Feast of Unleavened Bread, that's 2. And then you have 5, that's 7. And then Troas, that's 7 more. So if you totalitize, if you add it all up, just letting them flow tonight. If you add it all up, it's about a 2-week period. My wife wanted to right now give me the sign that I gave her earlier when I used that big word. But anyway. Now, I want to emphasize that because Paul's intention is to get to Jerusalem. Paul's intention is to get to Jerusalem by a certain time period. But he's staying at Troas for a while. Now, let me say this. There is some debate about what he's doing in Troas. Now, oftentimes is the case, whenever Paul stayed a while, he wrote a letter. Some people believe that Paul wrote the book of Galatians at this time. Galatians is a disputed book about the timing of it. Some people think it was written very early in his ministry. Some think it was very much later, like here. If it's true that he wrote there, the reason why there's such a debate, the term Galatia is a broad term in history. Sometimes it refers to a region, but as empires fought and everything, the region began to shift boundaries. And Galatia meant something differently years ago as it does during his third missionary journey. Anyway, whether he wrote Galatians there or not, it makes sense to me, but I can understand an earlier view as well. It's not a big deal, but he's there for 7 days. Now, he's wanting to get down to Jerusalem by a certain holiday. Look with me at verse number 16. Chapter 20, verse 16. For Paul had determined to sail by Ephesus because he would not spend the time in Asia, for he hasted, if it were possible for him, to be at Jerusalem the day of Pentecost. Now, Pentecost is always 50 days after the Passover, or 7 weeks. We already know he has spent 2 weeks up in the Troas area. 7 days at Troas, 5 days traveling, and of course, if you do include the 2, Passover and Feast of Unleavened Bread, that's 2 weeks. If there's a total of 7 weeks between the Passover and the Pentecost, he's got 5 weeks left. So his intention is to get to Jerusalem by that time, that festivity. Now, I skipped over several verses on purpose. Just a second. I'm in chapter 21. I lost my train of thought. Okay, so from verse 6 all the way to verse 16, there's some things that are missing that we're going to go over next week. In fact, this is the sermon where Paul preaches and somebody falls asleep during the sermon. Now, Eric just teased me earlier before the service about something, and he said, because I mentioned that somebody looked tired Sunday. I said, were they okay? And they said, no, Pastor, during your sermons, it's the best time to get sleep, or something to that effect. And I've heard that before, but that's okay. But Paul is going to be preaching, and someone's going to fall asleep. But I want you to see the timeline that Paul is trying to quickly get down to Jerusalem for a certain event to happen, to bring the relief, but during a certain during the Pentecost festival, which is 50 days after the Passover. But wait till you get to the sermon. The sermon is neat, and we're going to close out chapter 20, hopefully by next week. I don't think we'll get to all of it, but we'll certainly conquer the sermon and a few other verses as we get into next week. Any comments real quick before we close out tonight?
Did you say what the blank was on A?
I'm going to fill in all the blanks real quick. Any comments of anything I mentioned? I thought this was a much easier way to present it tonight than what's in your notes, but let me make sure you have all the notes. So number 1 was a farewell journey. Letter A, his plan in going. Number 2, underneath that, he expected to meet Titus at Troas. Number 4, there were 2 unnamed brothers. Some of this I've already covered, but I just thought it would be better presented this way. All right, so letter A was the plan in going, his plan in going. I think the next blank is letter B, the plot against him. We already read those verses.
Number 5 under
3 months, thank you. He would stay in Greece for 3 months. I missed it. And then letter C, the people who accompanied him. Now, Paul's intention was, while he's at Troas, is to not stop nearly in Ephesus, but to go by Ephesus. And he's going to call a bunch of preachers and people together and preach a sermon and say his goodbyes and all of that before leaving. And we'll get to all of that next week. God, thank you so much for the Apostle Paul. Thank you for his urgency, and thank you for companions that surrounded him in time of need. Not just as horsepower, as Niles put it, or commitment, but Lord, also for protection. Help us to find out what people need and do what we can to meet those needs. Paul did it as he collected funds for the people of Jerusalem. As he went through Macedonia, he exhorted them. He wrote the people of Rome because he wouldn't be there for a while. Help us to look at what others need, and may we do what we can to serve them rather than looking at how they can serve us. Bless these wonderful people, and thank you for their faithfulness. In Christ's name, amen.